So last week we finished our reading, our study of Book 7, the Book of Yoga, which is one of the late books that Sri Aurobindo composed. It belongs to the last period of his composition of Savitri, after 1945. And now, today, we are starting Book 8, the Book of Death, which is very little changed from the very early versions of Savitri from the 1920s. So we are we're moving forward in the story, but we are moving back in the time of the composition of the poem. And if you remember the structure of the poem, it begins with two cantos about Savitri waking up on the morning of the day when Shraddhavan must die. The first canto ends with that line, "This was the day when Shraddhavan must die." And the first page of Canto 2 tells about Savitri remembering as she wakes up, remembering her whole life and how she has, knowing that this is the day when Shraddhavan must die, she remembers the past and she remembers meeting him and the year that they spent together. And she knows that that year has come to an end. Today is the day when Shraddhavan must die. So now here we are in Book 8. That's that same day. When she wakes up at the beginning of this canto, it's the same day as it was at the beginning of Canto 2. And Sri Aurobindo wrote the beginning of Canto 2 at a later stage, when he was revising Book 1. No? So here we have a version of that waking up of Savitri, which is nearer to the very beginning of his composition of the poem. And this is the shortest book. It's only 5 pages. All the books of Savitri. This is the shortest one. And he has only revised it very, very little. At the very end, in 1950, when he knew that he was going to leave his body, he was working to complete Savitri. He wanted to leave it complete. And he was working with Nirod, dictating, revising the books one by one. So when they finished revising actually Book 6, he asked Nirod, "Is that all?" And Nirod said, "There's still Book 8, the Book of Death, and Book 12, the epilogue, after Savitri and Shraddhavan return to the earth." And he said, "Well, that will be for later." So he didn't revise this book, except that sometime in the late 1940s, he has added about 20 lines. When we come to those 20 lines, I will show them to you. He just added these 20 lines which have connected this book as it is from an early stage of the composition to the book as it became when he was completing it. So this is called Canto 3. This is again from that early stage in the 1920s when the book was divided not into books but into cantos. There were several cantos, and the canto describing death was number 3. Now it was here in this great golden dawn. By her still sleeping husband lain, she gazed into her past, as one about to die looks back upon the sunlit fields of life, where he too ran and sported with the rest. Lifting his head above the huge dark stream into whose depths he must forever plunge. All she had been and done, she lived again. The whole year, in a swift and eddying race of memories, swept through her and fled away into the irrecoverable past. Then, silently, she rose, and, service done, bowed down to the great goddess simply carved by Shraddhavan upon a forest stone. What prayer she breathed, her soul and Durga knew. Perhaps she felt in the dim forest huge the infinite mother watching over her child. Perhaps the shrouded voice spoke some still word. At last she came to the pale Mother Queen. She spoke, but with guarded lips and tranquil face, lest some stray word or some betraying look should let pass into the mother's unknowing breast, slaying all happiness and need to live, a dire foreknowledge of the grief to come. Only the needed utterance passage found. All else she pressed back into her anguished heart and forced upon her speech an outward peace. 1 year that I have lived with Shraddhavan here on the emerald edge of the vast woods, in the iron ring of the enormous peaks, under the blue rifts of the forest sky. I have not gone into the silences of this great woodland that enringed my thoughts with mystery, nor in its green miracles wandered, but this small clearing was my world. Now has a strong desire seized all my heart to go with Shraddhavan, holding his hand, into the life that he has loved, and touch herbs he has trod, and know the forest flowers, and hear at ease the birds, and the scurrying life that starts and ceases. Rich, far rustle of boughs, and all the mystic whispering of the woods. Release me now, and let my heart have rest. She answered, Do as thy wise mind desires, O calm child sovereign with the eyes that rule. I hold thee for a strong goddess who has come pitying our barren days. So dost thou serve, even as a slave might, yet art thou beyond all that thou doest, all our minds conceive, like the strong sun that serves earth from above. Dhanalakshmi will begin.
Now it was here in this great golden dawn. By her still sleeping husband, lame she gazed into her past as one about to die looks back upon the sunlit fields of life, where he too ran and sported with the rest, lifting his head above the huge dark stream into whose depths he must forever plunge.
Yes. So now it was here in this great golden dawn. That's the great golden dawn which Sri Aurobindo has described in Canto 1, the dawn that comes speaking of the future. What was here? It was here, the day when Shraddhavan must die. Shraddhavan is still asleep. He is still sleeping. And Savitri is awake. She remembers this is the day that Narad has foretold. Shraddhavan must die. So she is looking back into her past. She's gazing, looking back into her past. And Sri Aurobindo says that's the way a person who is themselves about to die, that they know that their death is approaching, they look back on those sunlit fields of life where they used to be youthful and run and play and live along with everybody else. Now all that's coming to an end. That person knows that he's sinking into the huge dark stream, the stream of forgetfulness, the stream of death. But he lifts his head up and he remembers his life. He knows that he will plunge into the depths of that dark river and be carried away. So that's the image. Savitri knows that a part of her life is dying now. Shraddhavan must die. And like a person who knows that he will die, she's looking back into her past and remembering. Suresh, you will read.
All she had been, and then she lived again. The whole year in a swift unending race of memories swept through her and fell away into the incurable past.
Yes. Everything that she had been and done, individual Savitri, since her birth, she relives it. And this whole year, the whole year that she has spent with Shraddhavan, sweeps past her like a river Again, this image of the river is there, a swift and eddying race. It's water moving quickly. But this is a stream of memories passing through her consciousness. And like a river, it passes you. That water is gone forever. There's more water coming, but that river with its leaves and sticks and things, this is all gone away into the past, the irrecoverable past, what you can't get back. You might, if you have lost something, if you are lucky, it might be given back to you. You might recover it, you might find it back or be given it back. But when the past is past, and when your memories of the past are gone, then there's no way that that past can come back, can't be recovered. So that is just 11 lines. It's interesting to compare it with the beginning of Canto 2, which comes on page 11, actually, of the book. And there, Sri Aurobindo expands this same idea, which he had in his early version, on page 11. He expands it into 24 lines. It's not 11 lines anymore. Do you mind? I will read these 24 lines. This is the same picture, Savitri waking up on the day when Shraddhavan must die. A while withdrawn in secret fields of thought, her mind moved in a many-imaged past that lived again and saw its end approach. Dying, it lived imperishably in her. Transient and vanishing from transient eyes, invisible, a fateful ghost of self, it bore the future on its phantom breast. Along the fleeting events, far backward trail, regressed the stream of the insistent hours. And on the bank of the mysterious flood, peopled with well-loved forms, now seen no more, and the subtle images of things that were, her witness spirit stood, reviewing time. All that she once had hoped and dreamed and been flew past her, eagle-winged, through memory's skies. As in a many-hued, flaming inner dawn, her life's broad highways and its sweet bypaths lay mapped to her sun-clear recording view. From the bright country of her childhood's days and the blue mountains of her soaring youth and the paradise groves and peacock wings of love, to joy clutched under the silent shadow of doom in a last turn where heaven raced with hell. 12 passionate months led in a day of fate. So it's very interesting to see how Sri Aurobindo, the same idea was there 35 years earlier, but how much it has developed and how much his voice, his power of poetic composition has increased in that time. So that whole year that Savitri and Shraddhavan have lived together is recounted from Savitri's point of view, from the point of view of her inner development in Book 7. And now again we have come to this day of death in the forest. So when she spent that time remembering, she gets up and begins the day. Parry, would you read?
When silently she goes, Savitri bowed down to the great goddess, simply carved upon the forest stone.
So this is a beautiful picture, no? She gets up in the morning. First she does her work, her household work. At the beginning of Book 7, there was a description of the things she had to do. She had to sweep, and she had to bring water, and she had to light the fire, see that the fire was lit for the gods on the altar and in the kitchen, where the cooking would go on. So she did whatever service she has to do in the early morning. And then it seems, here we are told for the first time, that Shraddhavan had carved an image of the goddess Durga on a stone that was there in the forest. So she goes and she bows down and offers a prayer to Durga. What prayer she breathed, only she knows in her soul. The poet doesn't know. Durga knows. Alice?
What prayer she breathed, her soul and Durga knew. Perhaps she felt in the deep, dim forest huge, the infinite mother watching over the child. Perhaps the shrouded voice spoke some still word.
So he says perhaps. Perhaps she had felt the presence of the infinite mother protecting her. And perhaps even there was some response. Perhaps she heard that voice, which in Book 7, she heard the voice several times. Perhaps at this moment also she heard it again.
At last she came to the pale mother tree. She spoke, but with guarded lips and tranquil face, lest some stray word or some betraying look should let pass into the mother's unlearned breast, slaying all happiness and need to live. A dire foreknowledge of the grief to come.
Yes, Sri Aurobindo tells us so much in just a few words. After having made her prayer, she goes to meet Shraddhavan's mother. And she has become pale and worn. She was such a beautiful woman, but now living in the forest, she's become pale and careworn. And Savitri knows that she has to ask permission from Shraddhavan's mother if she wants to go into the forest with Shraddhavan that day. But she's very careful that she doesn't give any sign to his mother that there's some special reason why she wants to go. She doesn't want, she speaks with guarded lips. She's careful about what she says. And her face is still tranquil. There's no expression of distress or anxiety there. No, she doesn't let any stray word or any betraying look, any look that might give her a hint of why really she wants to go. She doesn't want Satyavan's mother to see anything like that, because if she got any hint that there's some danger to her son, then that would destroy all her will to live. She wouldn't want to go on living. So if that knowledge which Savitri has would be communicated to Satyavan's mother, it would destroy, it would kill all her happiness and all her need to live if she had that same dire foreknowledge of the grief to come. Savitri has been living with that dire foreknowledge for a whole year now, but she hasn't shared it with anyone, and now she doesn't want to share it at the last moment to Satyavan's mother. Yes, you read, please, Jaffa. Yes, yeah.
Only the needed utterance does it fall. All its she pressed that into her unclear heart, and first upon her speech and outward peace.
Mother tells us actually that we should always only share the needed utterance, what needs to be said. We utter words, we speak words. If we say anything, it is an utterance. And if we want to be living a truly spiritual life, we should only speak the needed utterance. And it's very helpful even for us ordinary people at difficult moments when we have to say something difficult. If we just say only what is needed, nothing more. So that's the only thing that she speaks. Everything else she presses back into her heart. Her heart is anguished. It's full of grief and pain at this moment, no? But she forces on her speech an outward peace. She speaks in a peaceful, quiet, undisturbed way to Satyavan's mother. Mila.
One miracle I have reached with Satyavan, here in the emerald rays of the grassroots, in the iron ring of the enormous peaks, under the blue leaves of the forest sky. I have not gone into the silences of this great woodland that convince my thoughts with mystery, nor in its green miracles wonder. But this is not clearing was my work.
Yes. So I've lived here in the forest with Satyavan for one whole year. And then she describes this forest on the emerald edge, emerald, beautiful green color of trees, of leaves, no? Of these vast woods. It's a huge forest. But they live there in a little clearing on the edge of the forest. And all around there are the peaks of the Himalayas, of the mountains. This iron ring. The peaks of those high mountains, they are grey like iron. It's rock, nothing grows there. No? That's surrounding them, this iron ring of the enormous peaks. They are so much bigger than the little human beings and their settlement who are there on the edge of the forest. And above the peaks, here and there we can see the sky, the beautiful blue sky, through the trees and through the mountain tops. The rifts, there are gaps where the sky can be seen. So she says, I've been here in this scene for a whole year, and I haven't gone away from this little hermitage. I haven't gone into the silences of this great woodland that was always surrounding, enringing her thoughts with mystery. She didn't know what was there in the forest, no? And she feels that she hasn't wandered among all those wonderful things, its green miracles that are there in the forest. Only this small clearing, this small open place where there are a few simple huts, that was her whole world for this year. Joel.
Now, as a strong desire seized all my heart to go with Shraddhavan, holding his hand into the life that he has loved and touched, herbs he has trod, and know the forest flowers, and hear at ease the birds and the scurrying life that starts and ceases, rich far rustle of boughs, and all the mystic whispering of the woods. Release me now and let my heart have rest.
So this is a very nice and understandable way of explaining to Satyavan's mother how she would like to go with him into the forest. He goes into the forest every day, to gather wood, maybe for hunting, to bring food. So she says, now all my heart, this strong desire has come to go with Satyavan, holding his hand, into this life that he has loved. I want to be able to touch the plants, the herbs that he has set his foot on, and know all the different flowers that are growing there in the forest, and hear the birds, hear at ease without having any other tasks to think about. No? And to hear the birds and all the little animals that are there in the forest scurrying. We hear the little animals scurrying, running quickly, and we hear them running, and then it stops. They know that we are there, and they keep very, very still. And perhaps if you're at ease, if you're at leisure, you can listen, hear how far away that sound of the leaves stretches, the rustle, the dim rustle of the woods. It stretches miles and miles and miles away. And all the mystic whispering of the woods. So she asks her mother-in-law, please give me leave, let me go today, no? And satisfy this wish of mine, let my heart have rest. So, Varadarajan, you would read, please, the mother's reply.
She answered, do as thy wise mind desires, O calm child servant with the eyes that do. I hold thee for a strong birth between our parentage. So dost thou serve, even as a slave might, yet art thou beyond all that thou dost. All our minds conceive like a strong sun that serves the earth.
Yes. So this is a very gracious answer from her considerate mother-in-law, who appreciates her. She recognizes the wisdom that is there in Savitri, even though she is so young, she's still a child in a way. She says, "O calm child sovereign." A sovereign is a person who rules. No? She says, "In your eyes there's a power of a ruler." So because of that calmness, although she's so young, this majesty, Satyavan's mother recognizes something divine in Savitri. She says, I hold thee, I think that you are a strong goddess with powers, and you have come here to live with us out of pity for our barren days that are fruitless, that don't bear any fruit. She has been a queen and powerful person. Now they have to come and live here so simply in the forest. So she says it's as if you are a goddess and you've come out of pity to live with us and make our lives easier. She says, you serve like a slave might serve. A slave would do it out of compulsion. They can't help it. But Savitri is doing all that service willingly. And Satyavan's mother recognizes that while she is doing all that work, she is beyond it. In her consciousness, she is beyond everything that she does, and there's something about her that is beyond everything that our human minds can even conceive or imagine. So she says, you are like the sun. The sun is far up there in the sky, and yet it is pouring its light down generously, serving earth, from above. So in some ways Savitri seems to be like that. She's serving from above. And then it's nice to remember that her name, Savitri, is a remembrance of the sun. Yes. Sergei?
Then the doomed husband and the woman whom you went with laid hands into the solemn world, where beauty and grandeur and unspoken dream, where nature's mystic silence will be felt, communion with the secrecy of God.
Yes. So he says, Satyavan is the husband. He is doomed. He's the one who has to die. And Savitri is the woman who knew. No? They go together into that solemn world of great trees, this world of beauty and grandeur because of the height of the mountains and the size of the trees and the forest. Seems to have some grandeur, some greatness, and unspoken dream. It's as if it's holding some mystery, some dream that is not revealed. It's a place where nature's mystic silence could be felt, communing with the secrecy of God. There's as if a silent, mysterious communication going on between the earth in all its beauty and grandeur and God in all his grandeur beyond. Sarojini, you'll read?
We said here Satyavan one full of joy. We were singing with him to his supreme knowledge. He showed her all the forest
He showed her all the forest's riches. And then the flowers belong with the next line. You read the line again. He showed her.
He showed her all the forest
Riches. And then there's a comma. So there's a little pause. And then we say flowers. And then the next line, innumerable. Flowers, innumerable. Odor.
And soft cleaning it was red and pink and
Strange.
strange
This is a difficult word. Plumaged.
birds in every cry that their haunts sweetly vision
Boughs.
with these
Singers.
name more sweetly to fall.
Yes. So this is describing Shraddhavan, his happiness. He's so happy that she is going with him through these green haunts, these places which he goes very often, that he knows very well. And on the way he shows her all the treasures of the forests, the riches. So there are different kinds of treasures. There are many, many, many different kinds of flowers. Flowers innumerable. You can't count how many different kinds of flowers there are. And they each have their own odor, their own perfume, and their own color. Hue is color. There are also these creepers climbing up the trees, soft, thick, clinging creepers hanging onto the trees. And they are either red or green. And then there are the birds, strange, rich, plumaged birds. Birds are covered in feathers. Plumes are a word for feathers. And the bird, the special colors of each bird are its typical plumage. Today I was hearing that in our Savitri Bhavan garden at the moment there are bright yellow birds with yellow plumage and orange beaks, special golden birds. So there in the forest there were rich plumaged birds. And Shraddhavan, when he hears the bird call, he calls back. He can imitate the sound of all the birds. To every bird cry that he hears, like that one we hear now, whichever bird cry is coming from the distance, from the distant branches, he answers to that singer, that shrill singer, with its name called out in the way that the bird is calling. So he knows them all. He's lived in the forest for many, many years. He loves these birds and he recognizes them all. Ganga Lakshmi.
He spoke of all the things beyond the earth. His boyhood's comrades and his play fellows, orals and companions of his life. Here in his world, with every mood their thoughts to the common mind are blank. He shared to every wild emotion an answer.
Yes. So he tells Savitri all about these things in the forest that he loves. He's very happily sharing them all with her. These have been his playmates, his playfellows when he was a boy. These have been his comrades, his friends. They have been your coevals. They're the people who live at the same time as you do. They are his coevals and his companions of his life here in this forest world. And he knows every mood of that forest. The way sometimes it must be wild and rainy, and other times it's quiet and mysterious. Many different moods and feelings. They are all familiar to him. And it's as if he can share the thoughts and feelings of those things that are there in the forest. To the common mind, minds like ours, those thoughts are blank. We don't know what the forest animals and beings in the trees and what they are thinking. But he's familiar with all of them. He shares them, and he feels a response to all the emotions and feelings of those wild animals. I think that Sri Aurobindo did that himself. He loved to go walking in nature. He had a chance to do that when he was in England, and sometimes he was able to do it in his younger days in India also. And we can tell when he's describing he speaks about the fear-filled life of animal and birds. He knew what it's like for them, all the difficulties they have to face, but also the delights. So he's very happy. Shraddhavan is very happy. But what about Savitri? Shamala, would you read, please?
Deeply she listened, but with heart to hear the voice that soon would cease from tender words and treasure its sweet cadences to love. For lonely memory when none by her heart, and the beloved voice could speak no more.
Yes. So she's listening to every word that he's saying. But what she's listening to is the sound of his voice. She's treasuring that voice because she knows that soon it will stop. He will die. She won't hear those tender words. So she wants to drink in the sound of that voice so that she can keep safely the treasure of that sound, those sweet cadences, beloved, the way that the voice sounds. She will keep them to remember them for lonely memory when she doesn't have him to walk beside her and this beloved voice could speak no more. That's why she's listening so carefully to everything that he says. Mihon.
But little dwelt her mind upon their sense of death. No life, she thought, or life's lone end. Love in her bosom hurt with the jet edges of anguish, moaned at every step with the pain, crying. Now, perhaps his voice will cease forever.
Yes. So she's not thinking about what he's telling her. It's only the sound. She's not thinking about life, she's thinking about death, or that life that she will have to live up to the end when alone. So the love, the deep love that she feels for Shraddhavan is so painful at the moment. That love in her bosom, in her heart, it hurt with the jagged edges of anguish. Jagged, it's something sharp. You know? If something sharp touches you or cuts you, it's so painful. It's as like if there's something like a saw there in her heart with this pain. The love in her bosom is hurt with these jagged edges of anguish, of pain, and the love is moaning, making a sad sound. At every step there's pain. Oh, now perhaps his voice will cease forever. There's this anticipation of his death.
Even by some vague touch oppressed, sometimes the eyes looked round, as if their orbs might see the dim and dreadful God's approach.
So it's as if she can almost feel some kind of pressure or touch, you know? And she looks around as if her human eyes would be able to see the God of death, the dim and dreadful God, coming. Can she see him? Now it was here, in this great golden dawn. By her still sleeping husband lain, she gazed into her past, as one about to die looks back upon the sunlit fields of life, where he too ran and sported with the rest. Lifting his head above the huge dark stream, into whose depths he must forever plunge. All she had been and done, she lived again. The whole year in a swift and eddying race of memories swept through her and fled away into the irrecoverable past. Then silently she rose, and service done, bowed down to the great goddess, simply carved by Shraddhavan upon a forest stone. What prayer she breathed, her soul and Durga knew. Perhaps she felt in the dim forest huge, the infinite mother watching over her child. Perhaps the shrouded voice spoke some still word. At last she came to the pale Mother Queen. She spoke, but with guarded lips and tranquil face, lest some stray word or some betraying look should let pass into the mother's unknowing breast, slaying all happiness and need to live, a dire foreknowledge of the grief to come. Only the needed utterance passage found. All else she pressed back into her anguished heart and forced upon her speech an outward peace. 1 year that I have lived with Shraddhavan here on the emerald edge of the vast woods, in the iron ring of the enormous peaks, under the blue rifts of the forest sky. I have not gone into the silences of this great woodland that enringed my thoughts with mystery, nor in its green miracles wandered, but this small clearing was my world. Now has a strong desire seized all my heart to go with Shraddhavan, holding his hand, into the life that he has loved, and touch herbs he has trod, and know the forest flowers, and hear at ease the birds and the scurrying life that starts and ceases, rich far rustle of boughs, and all the mystic whispering of the woods. Release me now, and let my heart have rest. She answered, Do as thy wise mind desires, O calm child sovereign with the eyes that rule. I hold thee for a strong goddess who has come, pitying our barren days. So dost thou serve even as a slave might, yet art thou beyond all that thou doest, all our minds conceive, like the strong sun that serves earth from above. Then the doomed husband and the woman who knew went with linked hands into that solemn world where beauty and grandeur and unspoken dream, where nature's mystic silence could be felt, communing with the secrecy of God. Beside her, Shraddhavan walked full of joy because she moved with him through his green haunts. He showed her all the forest's riches, flowers innumerable of every odour and hue, and soft, thick, clinging creepers, red and green, and strange, rich plumaged birds. To every cry that haunted sweetly distant boughs, replied with the shrill singer's name more sweetly called. He spoke of all the things he loved. They were his boyhood's comrades and his playfellows, coevals and companions of his life, here in this world whose every mood he knew. Their thoughts, which to the common mind are blank, he shared. To every wild emotion felt an answer. Deeply she listened, but to hear the voice that soon would cease from tender words, and treasure its sweet cadences, beloved, for lonely memory when none by her walked, and the beloved voice could speak no more. But little dwelled her mind upon their sense. Of death, not life, she thought, or life's lone end. Love in her bosom hurt with the jagged edges of anguish, moaned at every step with pain, crying, "Now, now, perhaps his voice will cease forever." Even by some vague touch oppressed, sometimes her eyes looked round as if their orbs might see the dim and dreadful God's approach.